Hi, Dave Kites here from the Oto Wood Shop. I'm going to show you in this video how to use this long board straightening jig that we have in the shop. It's a jig that lets you get one straight edge on a plank or a board or a slab that has two crooked edges. Two crooked edges, you can't really run one along the fence and get the other one to cut straight because the crooked edge on the fence goes in and out. And the other side moves with it, so you don't get a straight cut, and you'll probably end up binding the saw beside. So, this method, using this jig, will be very straight the first time, one cut, right where you want it. You can minimize the loss of your material and avoid whatever problems you have in the wood at the same time. You get your best cut line, one time, one pass. After you get one side straight, of course, then you can use this fence, or it's a long board, this fence and a support, or get one of the other fences that we have in the shop, like the support fence that's for the thin strip jig. It's stored underneath the table here. That's a longer fence that gives you easier to keep it straight and going across the fence. So anyway, it's 8 feet long, so you need a support so it doesn't tip off the table. So when getting ready to put the jig onto the saw, you set the fence somewhere between 15 and 16 inches here. That way I know there's enough room for the jig to go on the saw there. And then get yourself one of these stands, bring it over here, make it about 3.5 to 4 feet from the edge of the table. There. So, yeah, there you go. And then, get something so you can adjust the height. Now this is the straight edge that will also be in the shop. I made this out of just plywood, of course, and a little finishing strip. But anyway, you make an angle like this, they keep each other straight. And it works out pretty nicely. So now I can move this up and down until I get all along the table there, and then just, now it's good. Okay, then you can get rid of this. We're going to use that again in a minute. Okay, so now I'm ready to put the jig on here. So I go get the jig. And we're going to put it on here. So, and that's about it. You just get it started. You see why we wanted to set the fence over there so that this didn't run into this stuff. It still bumped it a little bit. So maybe you set this at 16. There, 16 now, misty. Okay. So, the jig is sitting on, at least the base of the jig is. And then we can pull it back here so we can work up here. Now, what we're going to do is clamp our crooked board to the jig. Now, this board, I already cut one edge using the jig because I just wanted to be really sure it worked before I did. And I got a beautiful straight edge here. But we're going to pretend that's crooked. And then we're going to straighten this crooked edge. Okay? This edge is crooked. And what we're doing is we're going to clamp this to the jig with this crooked edge sticking out past the jig edge about 1/2 inch. And we're going to mark a cut line on here. And then we're going to line that up with the saw blade, and we're going to run it through, and it's going to cut it right down there. Okay, now the details. First, I want to establish my cut line. I want to see where I really want to cut this. So we're going to get our straight edge back again. And you're going to have to use this, of course. Any straight edge will do. If you got a nice long piece of aluminum angle, it makes a pretty good straight edge. If it's not real thin angle, get something. You can get a piece for about $30 at Lowe's, 8 feet long. Okay, I got a chip on the end, but I'm going to ignore that, and I'm just going to get rid of all this stuff here, which makes it not straight. See? Yeah. Now, if I wanted to, I could say, well, I don't need that much length. I can sacrifice this piece of wood, so I'll just leave that alone, and I'll move way over here. And now, you see, I can get more of my good wood for this whole section here. I'll tell you what, it isn't that much different. I'm going to do it. I'll do it. There. I'm going to make that right there. This is my cut line from there. And then down here, it just runs off the edge. So it runs off the edge, so I don't need to mark a mark down there. I just know the edge, near the very end is the edge. So, got a cut line. Except I don't have a long line, because I don't need a long line. All I need is this mark I got here. Tells me where to start. So what I do then is I get my box of goodies. It goes in. Now this box of goodies is normally stored with the jig, on the jig. Hopefully you can see there's a brass insert here, threaded brass insert. And the box goes on here. And this little knob threads into the insert and holds the box on. The whole assembly, the jig and the box then leans against the wall, backed by the dust collector for the router table and the big joiner. So it's leaning against the wall back there with the box attached. I would take the box off before I tried to move the whole jig over to the saw, if I were going to use it, just so it's easier to carry. And so, in the box, we have bags of wooden blocks of different thicknesses, and we have clamps. Now, I could position this board anywhere this way I wanted to on the saw. I'm going to do it here. I'm going to clamp it near this end, and I'll be able to get as many as 5 clamps on this one if I wanted to. There's 6 altogether, obviously. What we're going to find out is, I'm going to tell you, is 2 is really enough. 3 is very safe. Put as many on as you want to, but it ain't going to move with even 2 on it. So you bring this over here. Now remember, we're going to have this cut line hanging over the edge of the jig by about a half an inch, okay? So I'm getting ready here to clamp. So I put my clamp in, these carriage bolts that I ground, now they're T-bolts. And you just put it in there like that. Slide it up close to the wood. Get your blocks. So, you have to get our block, 1 block. We'll put block back there. In this bag are the only special blocks you gotta pay attention to getting right. These blocks, half dowels. Saw the dowel in half. It goes under where the clamp presses on the board. Okay, under there. That's so that you're always pressing down on the top of this thing. And it won't try to slide out. Okay? It doesn't. Trick is to make the back side just a little higher than the front side. You do that by picking your block out of these bags. Once you get one set, you'll know what you need. And I think I need, that's close enough, it's level, but that's all right. And then I can not tighten it up yet, because what I want to do, I want to get my cut line parallel to the saw blade. Well, we know the fence is parallel to the saw blade, and now the jig is on the fence, so the jig is parallel to the saw blade. So, if I take this spacer piece, and I put it against here, And then I put my mark on the other end of it, on this end, and I snug it just a little bit. I can go down to the other end with another clamp and the same kind of spacers and clamp the other end so that, remember I wanted the edge to be the cut line, so I'll put it right there. And I put in my T-bolt. Close to the board, double checking, got that pretty close. Now, don't over tighten this. You're going to bend the channel. That's tight enough. I don't know how to tell you how tight it's tight enough. Yeah, that's tight enough. Oh, I could have double checked here. Yeah, it didn't move. So my line is still at the edge of the board. So now, we've got it. 2 have got it. Okay, if you want to do more, there's 6 of these available, because there's 6 slots. We'll put 1 more in the middle here just to be extra safe. Alright, remember, half dowel on the board. Spacer pieces in the back. Yeah, needs to be a little thicker. Not critical, like that height. Make this a little higher, or at least level, and then just tighten it down that much. That's all I need. Done with the block. Put small back in the goodie box, and that's done. Our cut line starts that far from this, okay, ends that same distance down at this end, so it is parallel to this, which means it's going to be parallel to the blade. It's going to be a straight cut, right where I want it, all the way down. If I now raise the blade, and for this operation, I don't really need the pawls, the anti-kickback guys here, or this one. And I'm going to probably, well, I'm not going to engage it, okay? I'm going over here. Let's make sure I got my height high enough. That's good. And make sure the paw's not going to engage. It's not. Doesn't really matter if you engage the paw, except you won't be able to pull the fence back before you loosen won't be able to pull the jig back before you loosen the fence and move it over a little bit, because the paw will have your piece will stop, and it'll keep you from pulling it back. If you want to be able to pull it back at the end of the stroke without moving the fence, then don't use the paw. So line that up with the blade. So the fence is still not locked. So I move it over. I'm looking right down on it. I see the line. I see the inside edge of the blade. I get them lined up pretty close. Tighten this. See how much it moves. Moved out a little bit. There. Okay. I'm using one eye now. There. Boom. Okay. Now, if you get it and you think, oh gee, I need just a little bit more, and you're banging back and forth, stop the banging and just look and say, okay, I need a smidgen this way. And I know how big that smidgen is because I can see it right there. And then I go around over here and I loosen the fence and I look at the gauge on the scale and I see where it is right now. And then I move that red line, that smidgen that I remembered I needed, and I tighten it down and I double check. Yep, I moved the red line over the smidgen. That moved the whole assembly over the smidgen. So it'll be right now, and I look down here and I say, oh yeah, that looks really good. Okay, so again, get this back out of the way of the blade, because we're getting ready to start. So we double check. Blade height is right. Guard is down and not messed up. Back away out of the saw. Fence line, cut line is lined up and the clamps are all snug. So I'm ready to go. So all I gotta do now is turn on the saw and gently feed this thing through, and it's going to cut right down that cut line. Do a nice, perfect, nice job for me. Well, there's one other thing, because after I cut this, it's all over. If you got thin stock and you want to clamp it closer to the edge, in the goodies box, we also have some longer clamp bars. So you can't get this close to the edge because your board is there, okay? Let's say it's some 1/4 inch thick stuff, thin stuff, and it's 8 inches wide, okay? And you want to straighten that one edge. You can use this because you can get your post back here 8 inches away, and you can still have your half round close to the edge here, and you can pull down on it, and it'll work just fine. You have to put your blocks under here as usual. Okay, but you do all that, and you pull down on it, and it'll hold it just fine. Now, the only reason to do that with thin stock is, if it's wide and it's clamped back here, picture that, you could just pick that up and wiggle it up and down, couldn't you? Because it's flexible, it's thin. You aren't going to do that with this 3/4 inch piece of walnut. I can hold over here, and you're not going to move it, okay? But plywood thin, I could wiggle it. Well, the saw might make it wiggle like that when the teeth come, boom, 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 and it might start to vibrate, and it might not give you as smooth a cut. So you might want to clamp that out closer to the edge. But thick boards that aren't going to vibrate, you can clamp. Put this close to the edge of the board for maximum clamping power, and put this close, and you'll be a good clamp. Be a good clamp. Put the longer ones in there if you need. All right, so again, we're all ready to go. We checked everything twice. We're going to turn on the saw and run this through and get a nice straight edge. Notice my habit, and I think it's a good one, and everybody might consider doing it, is I stop the saw before I do anything else. Now I can lift this. I can see my thin strip is here. It didn't bother, it didn't get caught in here. That very seldom happens, that this thin cutoff strip on this outside gives any trouble. So don't worry about it. If you start fiddling, try to get it out of there, you're going to end up sticking it into the saw. It's going to jump up and it's going to be trouble. Just leave it till you're done. Okay, so now I could pull this back because I skipped the pawl, see, if I wanted to, or I can give myself a little room and I can pull it back. course. It's just, it feels like, it's much smoother than this surface. This combo blade, it's a good blade. We have a fine tooth blade too if you want to use it. But that walnut being hard, that is just as smooth as can be. So, that's how it works. And now, I can use a long support fence with this fence, or I can try using this alone with a support stand. And I can run this nice straight edge against the fence and straighten the other side if it was crooked. So that's how it works. Then you have to put everything back, okay? And when you do, you don't have to disassemble the clamps. Get the blocks out, turn these sideways, and then it'll come right out. You put that right in the goodie box. They'll fit in there like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all in there. And these go in the bags. And then when you get it over there, you take the goodie box and use the knob to hold it onto the jig and you're over. Okay, that's the way it works. I don't know if I forgot anything or not. I hope not. Does a super job. And, well worth the time to set it up, especially if you've got more than one piece. But if you've got 2 crooked edges, I think this is the way to do it. See you around the shop.